Welcome back, guys, and in this video we are going to take a look what's the Bastion Host or the jump box. You can call it Bastion Host or the jump box, and what's the tag is, and how many type of instance available in AWS, and what's the instance purchasing options available in AWS cloud computing. So let's start with the Bastion host, and the Bastion host basically you can configure it like an EC2 instance as the Bastion host in order to access your VPC instance for the management. Why? And the main question is why we require it, why we should create it Bastion host in AWS. So basically, the security is a prime concern for any company and which use the services to store their own data. So even though the Amazon provides the excellent security with its service, but it's there is always be some flaw in the security, and that can be, uh, the hackers can use those flaw and then can steal the information from your AWS cloud environment as well, whether it's strongly configured as an it's maintaining all the parameters, but there is still a chance. So that's why it is strongly suggested by Amazon to use SSH access to secure the services and their instance in AWS cloud computing, and that's how Bastion hosts come into the picture. So a Bastion host can be thought of as a special purpose machine which can be configured to work against attacks. So this is the machine which contains a single applications only, and uh, it has access to the public network. This is the only box or the EC2 instance which have the public access, and no any other machines have the access of, I mean, other instance doesn't have the EC2 instance, or other application doesn't have the internet facings option. So it has access to the public internet, and it is also known as a jump box. It is a powerful server which provides high levels network security, because it is the only host that is granted permissions to your public network access. And this machine can be used by the system administrators to connect the others instance of service which happens in the infrastructure backend. This uses plays with the help of many authentication mechanism, making sure that the system is safe. So this is how Bastion hosts come into picture. So this Bastion host basically hosted into your public subnet, and other services hosted into your private subnets, and your Bastion hosts have the access of your services into the private subnet only. This is the only boxes. So you can use the SSH or the RDP protocols to connect to your Bastion host, and it needs to configure a security group with the relevant permissions. And Bastion host can use the auto assigned public IPs or the elastic IPs. It can also use the security groups to restrict the IP address or that can access the Bastion host. And you can use the auto scaling group for the high availability, set to one instant to just replace it if it fails. And best practice is to deploy Linux Bastion host into availability zone, and use the auto scaling and the elastic IP address also for the Bastion host. So let's say when there is another question, when I needed this Bastion host into my environment, into my AWS infrastructure. So there is a question you can just think about. Let's say, do I need remote connection to my private instance of a services through the public internet? If the answer to this question is yes, then a Bastion host is required. Otherwise, it is not needed. It is not mandatory, but if that the question and the answer is yes, then definitely you should configure the Bastion host into your AWS cloud computing to access your services into the private subnet. So this is all about the Bastion host, and this is also called the jump box. Just just uh, keep in mind the Bastion host is usually configured into the public subnet, and behind this Bastion host you have all the services. It could be your web server, your database server, or any other AWS services in the private subnet, and this Bastion host only has the access to your private subnet services. Okay, so let's move with the tags. What the tags is? So tags basically enables you to categorize your AWS resources into the different ways. For example, by purpose, owner, or the environment, or their usage. And this is useful when you have many resources of the same type. You can quickly identify a specific resource based on the tags that you have assigned to it. And its tag is nothing. It's not as different as the label. It's just you are just putting the label on something and to identify and to just segregate easily from other resources. So okay, so that's the exact same it tags is going to work into the AWS also. So it also helps you to manage your instance image and other EC2 resources. You can assign your own metadata to each resource in the form of tags. And a tag basically is a label that you or AWS also, even you or the AWS can also assign to an AWS resources. And each tag consists of a key and a value. Key is the file, key is the name, and the value for their uh, for associated value is basically, let's say you are putting the name for your instance, then the key would be the name, and the value whatever value you just want to use them. And for each resource, each tag key must be unique, and each tag key can have only one value. And you can use the tags to organize your AWS resources and cost allocation stack to track your AWS cost on a detailed level. And after you activate cost allocation tags, so AWS use that particular cost allocation tags to organize your AWS resources cost on your cost collection reports to make it easier for you so that you can categorize and track your AWS costs easily. And after you or AWS applies tags to your AWS resources, let's say, and you activate the tag in the billing and the console, a cost management console, AWS generates a cost allocation report as a CSV file with your usage and the cost grouped by your active tags. So this is basically a use of tags is. And let's move into our very important topic, that is the instance purchasing types. How many purchasing types of instance is available in AWS? It's just, this is very very important. Just keep in mind, just go through all and each and every topics of instance purchasing type into deep, and just remember few terms. So first and foremost, that's the on demand instance. That's the first type of instance. Is basically used, this is the most flexible pricing options, and it requires no upfront commitment, and the customer has control over when the instance is launched and when it is terminated. With on-demand instance, you can pay for compute capacity by the second with no long-term commitment, and it's basically useful for the users that want the low cost and flexibility of your EC2 without any upfront payment or long-term commitment. Just just keep in mind these highlighted words. That's the no upfront. If you don't, you are not comfortable with the upfront payments, and no, you don't also want any long-term commitment with AWS, then you can go with on-demand instance. An application being developed or tested on EC2 for the first time, you can use the on-demand instance. Application with the short-term or spiky or the unpredictable workloads that cannot be interrupted. Just keep in mind, spiky, unpredictable workloads, but they should not be interrupted. Whether whatever the is the spike into the request or whatever the loads type is, but that instance should not be interrupted. Then you can go with the on-demand instance. And with on-demand instance, you pay only for the seconds that your in on-demand instance are in the running state. If you have put your on-demand instance into the stopped state, that you are not, then you are not going to pay anything to AWS. So then it's also recommended, if you there is the short term your application with the short term, or you are testing your applications, or there are unpredictable workload, does go with on demand instance. Okay, so second one is the reserve instance. That's basically reserve instance. It provides you with the significant savings on your uh, Amazon EC2 cost compared to on-demand instance. On-demand instance is quite, you have to pay quite higher than reserve instance, and reserve instance are not the physical instance, but rather a billing discount applied to the use of on-demand instance in your account. So these on-demand instance must match certain attributes such as instant type and the reason in order to benefit from the billing discount. And you can purchase a reserve instance for a one either the 1 year or the 3 year commitment. With the 3 year commitment, they will offer you bigger discounts than the 1 year. But just keep in mind the 1 year and the 3 year commitment, no 2 year or the 5 year. And basically, yeah, reserve instance they are useful for the application with steady state or unpredictable usage, and when application that require the reserve capacities, or users are able to make some upfront payments to reduce their computing cost even further. And if your computing needs change, you may be able to modify or exchange your reserve instance depending on the offering class, because they offer reserve instance, they offer the pricing types, is the standard reserve instance and the convertible reserve instance. So if you are using the standard reserve instance, this provides the most significant discount but can only be modified. You cannot be make any changes into your instance, but you can just modify your instance. And second option, that's the convertible reserve instance. These provides a lower discount than the standard reserve instance, but can be exchanged for another convertible reserve instance with a different instance attribute. And convertible or reserve instance can also be modified same as the reserve instance. Okay, and there are scheduled reserve instance also, but there are basically the three types: standard reserve instance, convertible, and the scheduled reserve instance. And just keep in mind, after you purchase a reserve instance, you cannot cancel your purchase. However, you may be able to modify, exchange, or sell your reserve instance if your need changes. And reserve instance they also provide you couple of options to for your payments. Let's take a look. Reserve instance payment options: all upfront, partial upfront, or the no upfront. So you can pay the full payment in the starting, and then you can get the more benefits as in the discount. You have also options for the partial upfront, so a portion of the cost must be paid upfront, and the remaining hours in the term are billed at a discount hourly rate. However, it is a little bit the all upfront is most cheaper than the partial and the upfront no upfront, but you have to pay a little bit more than all upfront in the partial upfront. And then you have the options for the no upfront. You are billed a discount hourly rate for every hours within the term, regardless of whether the reserve instance is being used, and no upfront payment is basically required. Third options, that's the sport instance. So a sport instance is an unused EC2 instance that is available for less than the on demand price, and you can get even this you can get the higher discounts on the EC2 is on the EC2 instance, because you are going to bid for the instance. If they are available at as per your bid into the AWS infrastructure, then you are going to get that particular instance until unless the bid value going to high. So it enables you to bid whatever price you want for instance capacity, and providing for even greater saving if your application have the flexibility to start or the stop. And spot instances are a cost effective choice if you can be flexible about when your application run, and if your application can be terminated at any time. So there should not be the mission critical or the production application or on spot instance, because they can be terminated at any time as soon as the price go high than your bid. So, for example, spot instance are well suited for data analysis, batch process, batch jobs, background processing, financial modeling, big data, media encoding, scientific computing, and testing. And customer will only pay the spot price for the hours that instance run. It is basically the hours, not the seconds. And the instance will run until few conditions met. Let's say the customer, either the customer terminating them by their own, or the spot price goes above the customer's bid price and there is not enough unused capacity to meet the demand for the spot instance. In all three conditions, the spot instance going to be terminated immediately. If AWS is going to terminate your instance because the capacity is not available now, and your bid price, the spot price goes above than your bid price, then the AWS is going to send you notifications, and then your instance will be terminated after that. And there are for another type of instance also, that's the dedicated instance. So basically dedicated instance is run on the hardware that's dedicated to a single computer, and the on demand or spot or the reserve instance that's not run on the dedicated hardware, but dedicated instance is run basically on your particular hardware, and it's dedicated only to your instance. It's not, the hardware not going to share by any other customer or other server. And dedicated host can help you reduce costs by allowing you to use your existing server bound software license. Let's say if you have you have a software which is bound with your hardware, and you just migrating your server to the AWS cloud, that you can choose with the dedicated hardware. Okay, and it's also useful for the regulatory requirements. They may not be support multi-tenant visualizations. It's basically great for licensing which do not support multi-tenancy or the cloud deployments. It can be purchased on demand early basis and can be purchased as a reservation for up to 70% off on the demand. Thank you guys, and in this video we have covered instance types, what's there in instance purchasing options available into AWS cloud computing, what's the tax are. So we have covered a lot, and in our next video we are going to take a look what's the placement group, what's the shared tenancy, dedicated tenancy options available in AWS. Okay, thank you guys.